I'd like to call the regularly scheduled meeting for the Village of Tinley Park Plan Commission to order at this time. If you could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Lori, can you take a roll call?
Commissioner Gaskell.
Present.
Commissioner Gatto.
Present.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Manny. Commissioner Merrick.
Here.
Commissioner Sepisi.
Present.
Commissioner Stokos.
Here.
Commissioner West. Chairman Gray.
Here. Okay, we do have a quorum present. We'll move on to communications. Staff, are there any communications?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay. We'll move on to the approval of the meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 18th, 2024 Plan Commission meeting?
Make a motion.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Gaskell, seconded by Commissioner Sepisi. All those in favor of approving the January 18th minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. We'll move on to item 1 on today's agenda. Item 1 is a public hearing for the Nova Cafe redevelopment, 7231 171st Street, special use for a substantial deviation to the PUD, variation rezoning rather, site plan / architectural approval. I do have a note that the petitioner's request has been withdrawn.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, well, then we will not proceed. We'll just move on to item 2. Okay, item 2 is a public hearing to consider recommending that the village board grant the petitioner, Scott Becker, on behalf of Eurofins Environmental Testing, a special use for a substantial deviation to the Tinley Crossings PUD to allow for the construction of an open storage area at 18410 Crossing Drive in the M1 PD zoning district. Site plan and architectural approval is also being considered at the meeting. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion.
Okay, made by Commissioner Sepisi,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Gaskell. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. The public hearing is open, and I have received certification of the public hearing notice being published in the local newspaper. So anyone wishing to speak on this matter will be sworn in before they speak, but after the staff gives their presentation. So at this time, staff, please give your presentation.
So this is a special use to modify the Crossings PUD to allow for outdoor storage for Eurofins environment testing. It's located at 18410 Crossing Drive in the Crossings PUD. It's between St. Coletta's and Proven IT. It's a 3.62 acre site. The building is existing. It's a large warehouse building. And Eurofins, the petitioner, has already purchased the building last year. They're planning to relocate from their existing location in University Park. Here's the site plan. They're doing outdoor storage, like I mentioned. They're proposing to have an enclosure in the rear of the building, which is actually oriented to the side yard. The outdoor storage area faces Proven IT's loading dock. So the top right there is an axonometric view of the storage area. The storage area is to enclose one 10-foot tank, one like 9-foot-ish tank, and a vaporizer for liquid nitrogen. The enclosure is all masonry, 8-foot tall, wood gates, and they've added evergreen trees to provide additional screening because screening outdoor storage areas is a requirement in the zoning ordinance. They've also made changes to the front of the building. These changes include adding a after-hours drop-off window, additional storefront facade changes, and then another window with a overhead door style window cover for drop-offs as well. And they've added a drop-off parking space in the front, and then there's a drop-off area in the rear as well for samples. And then I have the standards on the board.
Okay. Is the petitioner here wishing to speak? Please approach. I'll swear you in.
Not sure what I really had to say.
Well, say your name, sir.
Scott Becker.
Scott Becker. Okay. Scott, do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please proceed.
We're just here asking for approval to have the outdoor storage and have you know, I believe that the zoning requirement's a 6-foot tall screen element, but we're pushing that to 8 feet in order to kind of further screen. We did pursue or look to try to reduce the size of the tanks, but it's really just not an option in order for the way that Eurofins works. So we've been working with Michael here to come up with what we believe is the happy medium, which is the 8-foot wall that you're seeing, or screening wall that's there, plus the plantings that are there. So that's what we're looking for approval, and I think that's really all that we're asking for.
Yeah, Scott, one question. So like, I know you have the 2 tanks, you have the nitrogen, the liquid nitrogen, and then you have, what are the other, they said inert gases in the,
So it's bulk inert gas storage. You know the actual gases. better than I do.
Argon and nitrogen.
Yeah.
okay. And those are, you said, 10-foot and 9-foot tall?
One's 10 foot, one's 9 foot tall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I was just asking. I know you got trees there to buffer and so on and so forth, so.
Yeah, that's the intent. And I mean, it's really kind of in a parking lot essentially, right? Like when you think about who's going to be able to see this. We did a number of studies from the highway and I mean, it's so far back there, no one's gonna be able to see this.
Okay.
So.
With that said, I'll go to my commissioners to see if they have any comments or questions for you, so perhaps just sit tight up there. Commissioner Hamilton.
I'm curious about the use of the gases that are stored.
So Eurofins is a testing facility, and Lauren here runs the lab that's there. So can you just tell us a little bit about, maybe she could join us up here if that's okay?
This is required for our analytical testing. Most of it's for instruments in order to do the analysis itself.
Okay, so the gases freeze the samples, or what's the use of the
No, it
sample?
runs the instruments. The argon runs our metals instruments, so ICP, ICP-MS, it tests all of our trace metals. Nitrogen's used throughout the lab in the preparation of the samples and in the analytical portion.
Okay, and what kind of samples are tested in the laboratory?
So a lot of this is gas and water samples, so hazardous waste samples, remediation samples, anything that could be sent.
And soil samples.
Soil samples,
yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah.
EPA,
Right.
EPA methods.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
You can't go.
Are you familiar
Commissioner,
with- yeah.
I'm sorry?
Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with environmental because I'm an environmental engineer and a geotech
Ah.
engineer, with soils and
yeah.
environmental. So, you run the total 8 RCRA metals, right? I'm sure
Oh,
VOCs,
yeah.
SVOCs, pH, everything
Yeah.
in between, so,
Sure, argon.
yeah.
You
So,
guys are much smarter than me.
Yeah, so we need nitrogen for VOCs, SVOCs, stuff like that.
yeah.
I don't understand much of that, so.
No, and I know you guys are relocating from University Park.
We are.
Now, this will be your permanent home then?
Yeah, we've been down in University Park for about 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And we currently lease there. This is our permanent home.
Okay, yeah, and that's why I understand the need for pickup, like to drop samples off and to get them. You'll put
Yeah.
them in a cooler, you'll put, ice on them, keep them, with a manifest and so on and so forth.
Correct.
So I know that's a key component, so I have no issues with any of the drop off at the front or the back. I think that's, makes sense. It's, right, it's reasonable.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, like, can any of those tanks explode? I mean, is that a safety concern? That's my only question. Like, I don't understand.
I can answer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead.
okay.
So this was reviewed by both the building department and the fire department. The building and fire department preferred that the tanks be placed outside and 10 feet from the building. They're not likely to explode. However, if there were a leak to occur, particularly inside, then there's inhalation risk to anybody nearby. But with them outside, that's not really a concern.
Okay,
So there are code requirements in place to protect from anything that could happen, or collision requirements, things like that.
yeah, yeah.
And
I
we're also
just,
meeting all the distances from doors and entrances in the building.
Okay.
With the placement of.
So like any pressurized tank could, even,
Yeah.
even at gas
Even your-
stations, when
yeah.
we have,
Mhm.
you know, just gas there, so they just have to follow those
Same.
similar building and
Okay.
fire requirements.
They're not combustible gases, so you're
Okay.
not gonna have like some big
okay.
scary
Explosion,
thing.
yeah, okay.
But that does concur, like, that's a, like a HAZWAP requirement, like administrative controls and engineering controls, and since you're putting it outside, because that is the biggest pathway to exposure is inhalation. So,
People.
yeah, once you breathe that, it gets in your lungs and then into your bloodstream quickly, so that's the quickest way, pathway, so that makes sense, that tracks, yeah. So, any other questions? That was a very
Yeah.
good question,
So
Commissioner Gatto.
is there like gauges on the tanks, like if there was a leak, that it would notify you in a certain period of time so that,
There are gauges on the tank. We just actually sent those over to the general contractor. That's a good question. We're out to bid right now. So the
Okay.
general contractor was actually very similar questions.
Okay.
So there are gauges on the tanks that are monitoring kind of what's happening within the tank.
Okay.
So, I'm not the plumbing engineer and I'm not the piping engineer, if you will, but I do know that will be there and
it has like a detector on it if it starts to leak, that it would
Correct.
notify you? Okay.
yeah.
Okay, good
No-
questions.
no problem.
Commissioner Gatto, yes. Commissioner Gaskell.
No, I think everybody, that's answered all my questions.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner Sepisi.
Are these tanks in need of periodic filling?
So the tanks will be filled, is it a monthly or?
I think that they're usually filled on a weekly basis. The plan with Airgas is to come after hours. And there was some talks of trying to have the nozzles outside of the enclosure so that they can access it, but, I mean, this will be a locked enclosure that.
Okay, but there's room within this enclosure, within the pen,
Correct.
to get your filler vehicle or whatever in.
Correct. The filler vehicle will pull up right alongside of where those doors are that kind of open up. And then they'll open that up and then they'll kind of pipe over to fill the tank. So it all happens right there outside.
And I just want to pump the brakes. I know you came up out of the seat, so I'm going to have to get your name and swear you in as
yeah,
well.
please.
For your testimony. I know it's somewhat of it's after the fact right now, but state your name, Ms.
Lauren Gillens.
Lauren? Okay, and Lauren, do you affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Then, okay, please proceed when you're asked again. Commissioner Stockley.
I'm good, everything's been asked and answered.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner Merrick.
Nothing more, thank you.
Okay. I too have no more comments. My comments were kind of interspersed there, so you're free to sit down. We will
Okay.
ask the staff to, well, actually, let's just close the public hearing at this time. Can I get a motion to close the public?
Should I ask if there's any public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any public here wishing to comment on this item? If so, please stand. Okay.
Sorry.
Good, no, good catch. I saw this side of the audience, thought that was just, with that said, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Gatto, seconded by Commissioner Stockley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Okay, the public hearing is closed now. Michael, if you want to present the standards or
Sure.
display them at least?
Yeah, so standards for special use, generally they meet all the requirements. The development, the addition fits within an industrial park environment. They've done a good job of screening so as to not impact the neighbors. And then the business is also relocating from University Park to a permanent location in Tinley Park. So that's great for, an economic development perspective. So that's the special use standards. They're up on screen if you need to see them. And then the standards for the site plan approval, I have them up as well. I have the motions.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I have a motion regarding the special use permit.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the village board grant the petitioner Scott Becker on behalf of Eurofins Environment Testing, a special use for a substantial deviation to the Tinley Crossing PUD to allow for the construction of an open storage area at 18410 Crossing Drive in the M1 PD zoning district according to the submitted plans and adopted the findings of fact as listed in the February 1st, 2024 staff report.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I didn't catch who said it. Was it
Second.
you, Jim? Okay. So, motion made by Commissioner Gatto, seconded by Commissioner Gaskell. All those in favor, Lori, take a roll call.
Commissioner Gaskell.
Yes.
Commissioner Gatto.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Sepisi.
Yes.
Commissioner Stoklos.
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, that motion, number one carries. Now may I have a second motion regarding the site plan architectural approval.
I'd like to make a motion to grant the petitioner Scott Becker on behalf of the Eurofins Environment Testing, site plan and architectural approval to construct an open storage area at 18410 Crossing Drive in the M1 PD General Manufacturing Tinley Crossings PUD zoning district, in accordance with the plans submitted and listed in the February 1, 2024 staff report.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Hamilton, seconded by Commissioner Stoklos. Lori, could you take a roll call?
Commissioner Gaskell.
Yes.
Commissioner Gatto.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Sepisi.
Yes.
Commissioner Stoklos.
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, the motion is carried. So Scott and Lauren, this item should go to the village board at the February 20th, 2024 meeting, so please get with staff on, the details to attend, and good luck.
All right, thank you very much.
Have fun with the Tinley Park District.
And you don't have to stay,
Welcome to Tinley Park.
you don't have to stay to the rest of the meeting, you can go with this.
Why are you laughing so much?
I live here. I'm missing Aqua Zumba tonight at the rec center.
Oh.
Well, you're free to go,
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
no problem.
Take it.
Okay. We will move on to item 3. Item 3 is a workshop to discuss the Tinley Park Comprehensive Plan. The Village of Tinley Park has recently retained the Lakota Group to complete the update to the village's comprehensive plan. The Plan Commission will serve as the review body for the project as it progresses over the next 2 years. This is an initial kickoff meeting where the Lakota Group will present their proposal for their plan and gather input from the Plan Commission on issues within this community. So if, at this time, I guess, somebody from the Lakota Group to,
So, I'll load up their presentation, but, where'd it go? Maybe I won't. We're just excited to get started here. I want to thank everyone for being here and taking the time out. It's really important to get this group's input. You're the steering committee here, so in the future, we're just gonna ask way ahead of time to make sure we set up dates where almost everyone can make it. So I'll introduce, this is the Lakota Group, and there are sub-consultants, and they will be running the show from here.
And just one last thing there, which is, this is a little different than obviously no matter how long you've been here, we really haven't done a lot of planning in Tinley Park. So a lot of it's been developments coming before you, a lot of variations, things like that. So obviously this is a little different, but it's actually really what the Planning Commission was originally designed for, which is really figuring out our plans going forward and doing a vision into the future. So I've obviously plugged this a few times, and that our last plan was from 2000, and that started in 1998. And so I'm really excited to kick this off and really see, I think for a community our age, kind of where we're at, great place to live, but you kind of got to start to plan and think about where we're going to go. So we're excited. After a kind of lengthy process to get to this point, we got Lakota Group, highly qualified, and looking forward to them kicking this off. So.
Great, thank you. Chairman Gray and Commissioners, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm Scott Ferris, President of the Lakota Group. Our firm has had the great pleasure of working with you and your community most recently on the Harmony Square project, which we are all very proud of and looking forward to its birth and reality. And so I'm thankful for being here as part of the Lakota group, but I want you to know that we have a great team of people that are with us, and I want everybody to actually get up now and introduce themselves. They're all going to be talking a little bit, but I think it's great that you can at least know them and meet them. Maybe Fran, you want to?
Good evening, I'm Fran Root. I'm a partner with S.E. Friedman Development Advisors. We're an economic development consulting firm helping out on market analysis and development strategy.
Welcome, Fran.
We have a Fran E.
Yeah, my name's Franny Ritchie. I work with Sam Schwartz Consulting. We're a transportation and mobility consulting firm.
I don't get up that quick. I'm Van Kellenbarris. I'm the Director of Operations at Robinson Engineering. I've been at Robinson for 29 years or so. I will be partnering with Chris King, who some of you might know. Chris was our past president, and he's semi-retired, but he's still working with us, and he's happy to be helping us with this project. We'll be working on infrastructure and utility portions.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Alexis Stein. I'm a planner at the Lakota Group, and I will be assisting with everything from plan writing to community engagement to design, plan explaining, etc. So I'm excited to talk to all of you eventually.
Okay, excellent.
And we're going to, along with the introductions, we want to talk a little about, each of us are going to talk a little bit about our area of expertise and how that dovetails into creating a comprehensive plan. I want to spend a little time with you to tell you what is a comprehensive plan, where are we going with this. And one of the things I want to always lay down the lack, or try and sequester the fear built into the length of a process. So you heard the word 2 years of a process. 2 years is put out there because these processes take a course of their own. Public meetings, getting people together. It's very important for us to share with you, Nate, your role and involvement and how much time we're going to need from you on this. It's really important because what we don't want to do is burn you out on the topic. We're not looking for a lot of fatigue. We want to make this an energetic experience. We want people to get excited about planning for the future. Put all those things away. I heard somebody bring up the Park District. I don't want to hear about the Park District right now, but let's think about where we're going, what we could do. Let's think of good ideas, where we've got some problems, where we need to overcome some issues in the community, and look forward. It's a hard thing to do when we're sitting in our day-to-day and experiencing all the things that we've got to do in order to operate a community. But it's a good time to stop and look forward, and that's what your charge is in this process. Your role is to help us really navigate this process in a way that's communicated to the public in a positive way, educates the public on what we're talking about, what we're doing, and drives good questions that we need to answer for you in order to put these into the plan. I want to point out a couple other folks from my office, very important, who will be involved. One tonight who couldn't be with us, he had a little surgery this week and is on his back, not moving anywhere, and that's Siraja Asfahani, who you see on the screen. Siraj is actually going to be the project manager. So along with myself, Siraj is the day-to-day guy. He's the communications, he's setting up stuff. You're going to hear a lot tonight about the idea of community engagement. That is really the hallmark of who we are. That's why we, absolutely, that's why we have this team. These are the team that we work with all the time. We've been in business a little over 30 years, and we've found that the best success is in talking with people, but even more importantly in talking with people, listening to people. People want to be heard. And that's where a lot of the mistrust comes in communities. They weren't heard. We want to make sure everybody is heard in this process. So along with our role of engagement, we are also going to be doing the kind of what I would call the vision planning, the land use planning, the opportunities for redevelopment in the community. There was big emphasis in the request for proposal when we were brought on to look at are there areas of this community that are ripe for change? And how should we look at those? Maybe in a little bit more depth. Not a lot of policy, but how do we make them happen? Set aside policy from actual physical planning, and we'll put that into this process as well. And we want to develop a plan at the end of the day that drives reality. So I show this picture, and I show this picture because it started many, many moons ago to where we are today with Harmony Square. A big idea, a big picture. How do we get there? A lot of back and forth, ups and downs, not going to happen. We don't own the land yet. 1,000 different things that got in our way, but we stayed the course. of the vision, and it's gonna happen. That's exciting. You've heard from some of our folks. They certainly have a great team behind them, but everybody adept in their skill sets, particularly the need for market assessment, understanding transportation, understanding our infrastructure systems. How are they working, and how do we look forward to make sure they're serving our community? We talked a little bit about your role. Your role is defined as three things in our book. One is you're guiding this process. You're our benchmark to share our ideas and thoughts with. You can certainly tell us along the way, that's not us, we don't like that, we need to look at some alternatives or options. That's okay. In between you, on our regular basis when we're meeting, we're working with this team of people on a day-to-day basis on a whole host of things. So recognize that while we may only see every month or month and a half to talk about process or where we're going, we're working on a day-to-day basis with staff to make sure that we are laying the groundwork for a successful process. And you're going to be looking at our deliverables. You're going to be providing input. Those things need to get to you in advance, so we're not going to drop them on you the day before and then show up the night after that and go, hey, did you read it? You're not going to read it. You got other things in your life. So we want to make sure that we're being realistic about giving you information and keeping it simple. Don't make it 38 pages of reading. It's not going to happen. It's real. It's a reality. I've said in your position on our community plan commission, the worst thing in the world is to get dumped down with a ton of stuff and like not take it in small pieces. So we'll be respectful of that along the way. And lastly, you're our ambassadors. So one of the things that we're going to be doing with this process is we're going to be establishing a brand. I don't have a brand for you tonight, but we're working on some great ideas for that. That brand needs to align with your community brand, which is more about harmony. What is it? Why am I drawing a blank? Life Amplified. That's what it is. We want to be respectful of that, but we want to have a special brand for this process because we're going to need to communicate to the outside world in Tinley what we're doing. What is this? What is that process they're doing? Are they rezoning the property? Are they developers? We want to make sure people know exactly what we're doing, that we're planning, that we're doing long-term planning. And that's very, very important. What is a comprehensive plan? Comprehensive plan is a vision forward. It has a lifespan. We like to say it has a lifespan of 10 years, maybe 20 years, but it's a living document, and it needs to be reevaluated every year because things change. Look what just happened a couple years ago. We had a pandemic, changed the whole world. We were working on a comprehensive plan in 2019, started it, talked to the community, got all their feedback, started working on that comprehensive plan, shut it down. Came back again, re-energized it. They had a whole new view of their world and how important their town was to their sense of well-being. And so a comprehensive plan is a strategic roadmap. It's a guide for development. It informs other types of codes and regulations. So it'll inform how you look at land use, and it'll inform how you may look at zoning and other regulatory compliances, how we look at our community. Should we have guidelines for how the quality level of things that go into our community? You're just talking with these folks tonight. At what level do you need to know a little bit more detail or not? Maybe it's okay, because economic development is more important than worrying about the specifics of the paint on a fence. Those are topics that'll come out of this process. Community vision. Community vision comes out of the conversations that we have, and you're going to hear about that and how we engage the community and find out where we go. Who are we? What do we want to be? We're happy with the way we are. I think we could be better. And you have to ask yourself a little bit. I do this all the time. It's not about me. It's about the next generation. It's about those kids who are at the high school. Why would they want to come back and live in this community? Ask yourself, why would they want to come back here? What are we doing to make sure they come back and carry the ball forward? It's a really big question. We all tend to focus on ourselves. I like it the way it is. I know where we're going. But really, it's the generations behind us that we're planning for, and that's super important. They live a different world than we do, and it runs much faster. It runs in this stratosphere of multimedia, omni-channel communication. It's not the old way where we just sit around and have a cup of coffee and talk down the street. So we want to make sure we are developing a plan that's all about you, but speaks to the future of what your community wants to be. And we want to establish policy direction, not development proposals. This is not we are not developers. We are not bringing specific plans that are going to be built. We want people to know that when we share ideas of what can happen in your community, they're ideas. But they need to be tested in reality, market reality. You can't do that. You can't build that downtown plan unless you have TIF financing or some other mechanism, or unless you throw some skin in the game. We're going to share those realities as part of this process. Some people are, I don't want to hear that, but that's really the reality. To get to where you want to go, somebody's got to pay for those things. And we want to be realistic when we're sharing ideas and solutions. And we want to be able to evolve. So we've identified a timeline, which I'll get into, of 2 years. It may take a year, year and a half, 2 years, but we let it out a little bit more so that we were careful about making sure that we were being respectful of listening to the community and pivoting when we need to pivot on topics that are important. We know there's lots of topics that are out there. There's lots of sensitivities that are out there. Because of our involvement with your community, we've heard about them, and we're engaged in them already. So we're not starting from ground zero, which is a really important thing. We're starting from already know a little bit about where the community wants to go and where there's important components of the community we need to focus on. So let me, and my eyes are bad, that's why I'm jumping to this, because I'll be looking up at the screen the whole time. Oh, back. The end goals are a series of strategies and what I would call directives. They focus on establishing community vision. They focus on developing land use strategy. What are the right combinations of land use for the community? Those are the colors on the map that you see. Are they in the right places, or we need to think of them a little bit differently? They want to look at leveraging resources, and those resources are financial resources as well as economic development resources. How are your neighbors doing? How can we leverage our relationship with our neighbors? How do we leverage our position, our accessibility from the regional highway systems or the railroad? Are we maximizing the benefit, and are we doing it in a way that will set us up for long-term sustainability? We want to develop sub-area plans. As I mentioned to you, we want to focus on more physical areas of the community, not just talk about it in a myopic policy way, but physical ideas and solutions so people can see it and get their arms around it. We want to guide ourselves around reinvestment in the community from a public standpoint or a municipal standpoint, but we also want to use that public reinvestment to attract private reinvestment. That's the genesis of everything that's happening downtown right now. You got to put a little in, but you're going to get it out from the private sector. And I think you guys are going to see an unbelievable benefit from the effort that's going in just down the road on Oak Park Avenue. And lastly, we want to improve community awareness. And community awareness really focuses on the best thing we can do is make people aware that we're doing this process. They have an opportunity to engage with us. We're going to talk about all the ways they can engage with us one-on-one, electronically, or in community forums. We know you've got lots of festivals here. We'll make ourselves available. We'll set up little booths or little event areas where we can talk to people. But that is the best way to communicate with folks and get the information out. Our approach, as we defined it, is a three-step approach in our proposal. The first part is all about engage and assess. So we're talking, listening, and uncovering all the information we need to know about the community at all those micro levels, whether it's the market, whether it's demographic, whether it's transportation, whether it's infrastructure, or it's political. Understand the dynamics of what are going on and listening to everybody and consolidating that into what would be a report that would say, here's the state of the community. This is what we're going to build off of moving forward. That's about a, what is that? 8-month process, September. This was back when we started this process back in September. We've kind of moved everything forward, but say about 6 to 8 months in terms of that process. The envision process, a little bit shorter, that's phase 2. That's where you start developing ideas and solutions and putting them out to the community in forums, but also bringing them back to you as our steering committee and go, is this what people want to talk about? Is this what people want to talk about? Housing, open space, bike linkages, whatever the key topics are, those are the important components. We've outlined that again in a process. It's about 6 months of duration. And again, these move with meetings and schedules and how important it is to keep on track with this process. And lastly, phase 3 is how do we get there? That's putting the final plan together. That's writing the narrative. That's illustrating the document. And it's not so much about all the illustrations, but it's about communicating effectively. How do people get the information out of this that's important to them? And I think we've all seen running through and looking through zoning codes and trying to find information really doesn't work. It needs to be illustrative. It needs to be in a way people can comprehend and get it. It needs to be web-based. It needs to be paper-based. And at the end of it, The best thing that you can do that you're serving is you're serving up a work plan to your village leadership on what to do over the next 10 years, and you're developing priorities and action steps. That's what will be the crux of that comprehensive plan. It is a workbook and a tool book for staff and leadership to move forward on specific initiatives. You may suggest a range of priorities and actions, but you're going to bring that forth to the board, and the board is going to deliberate on which of those things are. That's your charge. Our approach, and I use this term systems thinking approach, is just that. All of the topics that we'll talk about that are part of this, whether it's housing, parks and open space, sustainability, conservation, urban design and placemaking, economic vitality, all of those are interweaved. There may be what I would call chapters on each of them, but they all speak to each other throughout the entire dialogue. They're not mutually exclusive. And that's an important thing to think about. And the last little I that we put on there, we got to keep an eye towards the word diversity, inclusion, and equity. We've got to think about how we're looking at the broader scope of not only your community, but the region and what's happening around us in the world. And that's a filter across all lenses. I'm going to shut my mouth up for a second. I'm going to let Alexis talk a little bit about our engagement process.
Thank you. All right, let's hope I can figure out how to use this. On the right, okay, great. Hello, again, my name is Alexis, and I am here to talk about the most fun and also most important part of the planning process, which is community engagement. It is truly paramount to our planning process at Lakota. We're not just trying to check a box, we're really trying to create a safe space for people to share their ideas. We're trying to build that trust and really just get the community's buy-in in the plan. So like Scott said, we have a variety of tools that we can use, but we do usually stick to this framework for community engagement. So first, we focus on informing the community. We create a really cool brand. We create a website. We want people to be able to access the project and be able to be engaged throughout the process. And yeah, we want it to be accessible. And then also so that leads to the next phase, which is listening to the community, learning from them, and just really understanding different groups. So talking to you guys, talking to, like Scott was saying, other generations, such as teenagers. That's something that we love to do, is just talk to different generations who are going to grow up in this community. And then finally, we take all of that information and we engage the community, bringing to them preliminary visions, preliminary strategies, goals, concepts, etc. So going back to that informational phase, this is an example of a brand and a website that we created. As said, this really helps the community to access the process and build that trust, and then it also creates visual consistency, so people see that, they get excited. And then we have a variety of tools, as said, so we can go the traditional engagement route. Presentations like this, workshops, but that doesn't always work in every community. So sometimes things like incentivized engagement, where we're providing food or prizes or even childcare, depending on what the community needs. Also, next level marketing. So you see here that there's a billboard, just anything to help get the word out. It could be text messages, it could be flyers in businesses. And then also interactive engagement. We're in Tinley Park, y'all love music, so it could be something like a concert, or like you see here, murals, and just something fun to engage the community in a non-conventional way. And then also pop-up workshops. So not everybody wants to come to Village Hall, but maybe if there's a farmer's market, or if there is a community center, a rec center that we can pop up at, then we'll go there to get even more engagement.
This is just a quick example of one of these more out-of-the-box methods. We call this Lakota in the streets. So we'll go to the community on a weekend day and just try to catch people who are walking down the street, take a little video, make them feel special, get their voices heard. It's really fun. And then this is another example of some of our engagement material. You see there's an Instagram post, so that's something we like to do, post on Instagram, post on Facebook. And then we get out and about, and for this process, we had over 1,800 participants. So that's a pretty successful engagement process right there. All right, and then I will turn this back over.
Back to me, that's right.
Yes, we're going to talk about planning topics really quickly.
I want to jump back really quick because I think there's something important on this slide. And if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see a lot of different languages. And something that's important to recognize is not everybody is speaking in the same language. And so sometimes we have to think about how we reach audiences that would otherwise not participate in some of these events and share different types of approaches to communicating with them. Okay, topics. I think when we think of a comprehensive plan, we want you to think about this as well. What are the key topics? What are the chapters of the book? What are the areas that we need to focus on as part of the community? And we put these up there because they're generally fall in most communities' comprehensive plan, but we like to think of them differently. We may phrase them differently. We might turn them around a little bit so that they align with your community, what's important to you. The topics are housing, mobility. Mobility is what transportation used to be called. Mobility talks about all the forms of moving, sidewalks, pedestrian, pathways, bicycles, ADA accessibility, cars, public transit, the whole spectrum of mobility. How do we get around as a community? Community character is a big topic, and that really speaks to design. What is the quality of the design of your community? Do you want to have a topic of that? Is there something that's important with regards to what I would call heritage or cultural aspects of your community that are important to think about? We know the downtown is a really important topic, and it should have its own life. How do we focus on really strengthening and building a great downtown? There's a lot to do there. There's areas of sub-areas where I talked about some of the areas in the community that have special needs or areas that we should be thinking about. We know there was more of a controversial topic of one of them that we're probably not going to dive into, but it's important to think about all those. We think about land use, and that is the relationship of all the different uses in this community. Are they working? Do we have the right relationships? Do we need to think about buffers? What happens when that industrial property next to the residential changes in the future? Should we think about what that means? Parks and open space and how important that is. In a lot of communities now, we don't call it parks and open space, we call it community health and wellness, because it speaks to the broader topic of how important parks and open space are to our community's health and wellness. And health and wellness is what people are looking for when they look at quality of life living in a community. It's one of the key topics. Utilities and infrastructure. Our folks at Robinson, this is what they know so well. They already know your community, what's going on underground and above ground and everywhere else. So we need to tap into that and go, hey, are our capacities there? Do we have some long-term reinvestment we need to make in that? Are there some extensions we need to make throughout this community to turn other areas on? What is the cost of that? What does it cost to operate that? Are we thinking about that from a fiscally responsible standpoint? And then sustainability, we show it up here. A lot of communities think of it as a separate pillar. I don't think of it as a separate pillar. I think of it baked into every one of those. There's a sustainable policy and action and way of thinking and doing business and living in the community that should be across all those pillars. And we share those with you, not that those are the right ones, but we're going to talk about those. We want to hear from you what's important. And with one of them that's important, a couple of those that are really important, I'm going to let Fran talk a little bit about those in detail.
Thanks, Scott. So where we come in is really kind of building on the engagement. As Alexis was talking about, part of the engagement is informing the community. And so right on day one, we're going to start taking a look, and we've actually already started taking a look at demographic data, trying to understand who lives in Tinley Park now. How has that shifted over the past 10 years? How has it shifted over time? We know you're an aging community. We've seen you're also diversifying. What does that mean in terms of the community, and what does that mean in terms of housing needs and economic development? So we start to relate who lives here, with what types of housing you have, and with some of the preferences that we see in different cohorts of the population. So Scott's talking about, we have seniors here, we have empty nesters, there are a lot of families, there are young adults. Do we have the right types of housing today that meet the needs and the preferences of those people? A lot of communities are finding out that they really don't, and so what we want to do moving forward into the plan, after we've done the analysis and understood your current housing stock and explained what the market is asking for these days, is start to lay out a framework for what are some of those potential policies that you might consider in the future that we can include in the plan. You'll see a couple of examples in my slides. These are from other communities. They're not necessarily applicable here, but they give you a sense of kind of where you can go with some of the results that come out of a comprehensive plan. I'm going to go the wrong way. There we go. Beyond housing, we're also going to think about your commercial areas. So Scott mentioned, we had a big change a couple of years ago with the pandemic, how everybody shopped really advanced in terms of using the internet, using some of these, you shop online, you're in the store, but you don't buy in the store. Everything's different. Everything's always different in retail, right? Nothing's very static. We can remember what retail was like prior to the Great Recession and how retail would come into a community even before the households were there. That doesn't happen anymore. We're going to take a close look at what your retail centers are. We're going to think about what's working well. We're going to try and understand what's not working, and then start to pinpoint where are those places where maybe some change in land use is needed. What can we do to bolster the retail that you have? We know retail is very important to every community in Illinois because of sales tax. So how can we keep what you have, make it better, but then also recognize when it's time to consider other uses in certain places? We know downtown's really important. We'll think about retail there as well and start to think about what are the types of uses you can use to really start to attract people, make sure that folks are staying downtown, understand where they're going before they come to the downtown, where they're going after, how long they're sticking around. We have some really powerful data tools that shed light into that. So sort of really exciting to be able to understand some of the patterns that maybe you haven't been able to see before, and then explain those to the public, get reactions, and plan for the future. We'll also think about industrial. You do have industrial land here. You're also in Cook County partially and in Will County. We know there are some big tax implications to that, and that really informs real estate decisions. But we also know that the industrial here seems to be doing pretty well already. So how can we leverage that? What are the places, again, that we can build on that? And is there any additional land that we want to think about for industrial, taking into account shifts that are happening and continuing, to advance in the industrial world today as well. So we try and make our analysis as approachable as possible. Scott said we don't like to drop tons and tons of data or tons of pages on you. We do sometimes at SB Friedman drop a lot of information, but we try and make it as approachable as possible. Lots of graphics. We'll talk you through it. Just want to make sure that for those who are interested in all of the background, that we're providing that information and making sure that it's available for the people who want to dig into it, but then also really trying to synthesize and say, here's what matters, here's why it matters, and kind of tie what's happening in Tinley to the broader forces so that it doesn't feel like you're separate from the rest of Chicago region, and then even just what's happening nationally. So with that, I will hand it over to Franny to talk about mobility.
Okay.
All right. So what we can see here is what the public elementary school sheds are. One of the reasons that this is a mobility topic is because 2 decades ago, something like 45% of students nationally walked to school, and today it's more like 13%. So thinking about how the youngest and most vulnerable members of your community are moving to and through their destinations every day can really inform how safe your community is writ large. And so I love to start by thinking about schools and thinking at a really micro level about how people are moving around in their immediate neighborhoods and how that begins to inform your larger mobility patterns. Also, this is true in Tinley Park and in general. The majority of journeys are under 2 miles, and so that is a distance that's traversable by the youngest members of the community, and you can start to think about making it work for them, and if it works for them, it works for everyone. So this is a really nice way to start thinking about how we can take approachable, bite-sized bits of mobility and kind of break it down in a way and then start scaffolding it and go from the smallest unit to a village-wide unit, and think about how mobility can work across the board at both a small and large scale. All right. So Sam Schwartz is a national mobility firm, but I'm based in Chicago. I'm based in the western suburbs, and we've worked across Illinois. We've worked in 90 communities in Illinois as of last count. We did this is an example of the MOVE DSM, Des Moines, Iowa Transportation Safety Plan that we did in 2018. Excuse me. And one of the things that we do and have done recently is start breaking down individual sort of high conflict areas. So we've already started mapping where the crashes are happening in your community and mapping them by severity and mapping them by what's happening to whom. So we're looking at vehicle crashes, bicycle crashes, pedestrian crashes, and we'll focus on areas that have high crash activity writ large and particularly crashes for vulnerable users, so bicycles and pedestrians, and we'll start thinking about how we can start to develop a toolkit of approaches that'll work at the individual intersection level, and then also how that can be applied sort of across the community, similarly to how I was talking about schools. Something that we've done recently that we found really worked well is developed a village-wide toolbox. So we'll take all of the high crash intersections and look at, if you were to go hard at this intersection, do everything that would geometrically fit, what would that look like, and what could you do? And then as your community changes, if you have a development opportunity or you have a grant funding opportunity or something that allows you to think about, what do we want to do in this location or this location? The community is changing and we want to respond. You have this toolkit that works for you in perpetuity, and it's both kind of the sausage getting made and it's something that you can use going forward. And so that's the sort of thing that we'll be thinking about going forward. So I think I'm going to hand it off to Van. I also have family in Tinley Park, so my cousin lives here. I'm excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Van with Robinson Engineering. Scott mentioned that we are very familiar with your infrastructure. So just to give you a little taste, my partner who I'll be working with on this, Chris King, started working for the Village of Tinley Park in 1984. And he worked all the way through 2019 working with the village, at which point I took over for Chris. So in Chris's 35-year run working with the village, as you know, population increased by about 30,000 people, which you can imagine the impact that that would have on infrastructure. So Chris and Robinson Engineering worked with the village over that course of 35 years on various infrastructure improvements, from water main installations, stormwater management systems, street lighting, roadways, sanitary sewer trunk lines. I think the total is over $200 million worth of infrastructure improvements over that time. So we do know your infrastructure, and beyond that, Robinson and Chris helped with the village to implement their village subdivision regulations and the legacy code. So we've obviously been very involved with your infrastructure over the course of years. Recently, Chris and I have designed the infrastructure improvements for the Harmony Square development. So we're super excited to see that come to, out to bid and get into construction. So that all being said, we have worked extremely hard with the village to hold your standards to the highest level. We have worked with developers, sometimes fighting with developers to make sure that they don't shortcut the village with standards. And we've also made sure on the construction side that contractors build per the approved plans and specifications. So by doing so, we refer to Tinley Park as a build it right community. You've always held your standards to the highest level. And by doing so, we think that pulls along property values. You have good infrastructure feeding your developments. you're going to have higher property values, and we have seen success over the course of time of build it and they will come. An example of that was extending infrastructure out to the I-80 corridor, LaGrange, right? The village was looking forward, planning. We just, we had to figure out sizing and all of that, how to get the infrastructure there. And by doing that, the development obviously came. So Scott mentioned it's important, obviously, to make sure you can afford future developments, but you have to make sure that they're sustainable with infrastructure. So our role in this will be to listen to where the plans want to go, and again, try to make sure you've got the infrastructure to support that. So, thank you.
Okay. So, this is a good stopping point for a second to maybe ask if anybody has any questions. We have some kind of primer questions for you. If you need a break or want to get up and stretch, we can get up and stretch, but I thought we'd maybe stop for a second and ask if anybody has any questions about the process or what the goals are behind this comprehensive plan.
I do have comments, but I'm assuming we'll all give comments towards the end of the presentation.
That's great. That's great.
I mean, unless there's somebody that has something they're chomping at the bit for.
Yeah, that's great. And I think a really important thing to understand is we've got some primer questions just to kind of start thinking globally. And lots of times when we put this up, we don't get response always from people. We want you to know that you can reach out to us through staff and talk to us directly. We are going to be meeting with each of you individually. And we can talk about anything you want to talk about. The idea is to really get to know what's going on in the community through your direct contact. Sometimes those conversations are better when we just have one-on-one over a cup of coffee than a big forum like this. So I don't want anybody to feel like, we got to give an answer. We just are using these as primers, and we want your feedback. If there's something, hey, I'm not really sure if I understand this, how much involvement, whatever, please let us know. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Feel free to answer them though. Normally this is a very formal situation where we do Q&A and we have motions to talk and go through the line. So we want it to be a little more open. So if you guys do have any thoughts though,
I just didn't want to interrupt the flow, but if that's what you guys are looking for, I do appreciate everybody's presentation. And I'm glad you have a specialized group of people because you put up there different things that people look for. And I wrote down my 3 before you even got to that slide.
Perfect.
And so the economic vitality, we're the Planning Commission, and one of the things we've seen in recent trends is, pre-COVID and even post-COVID, you had empty storefronts, right, that need to get repurposed. But recently we had some new storefronts that are ready to, be opened but the tenant decided something else. And so, to me, as a plan commissioner, this is a big fail, right? Unlike infrastructure, because I do agree with Van, if you put, water mains and you put electric and now people can build there and you get the road to that area. But buildings are different, and Fran can attest with her marketing, you can't be Kevin Costner in the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. You have to be like Moses and lead the people to the promised land. We see people that, are here in front of us, and then they're gone tomorrow. And it's very disturbing and alarming for some people to come back to the well and say, let's build another building next to this building that's brand new and not being used. And I'm not giving specific details, but I think everybody on the Planning Commission knows what I'm talking about. So it's a very non-strategic way to plan. I think that it's a big fail. They have a nice shiny building with a tenant who doesn't come. And then a developer going, let's put a building 100 feet from it, and I love the strategic part of the marketing. Not everybody's a fit. Not everybody's a fit. I think sometimes we have to tell people no, right? I have a friend, I can't remember his company's name, but he did the assessment for whether the Tinley Park Convention Center should be expanded. And if it is, what are the types of events they can attract?
Right.
Because if you don't do that, you're going to fail if you fail the plan. You plan to fail when you fail the plan. But So that's the thing that I think is a big fail from at least this end of the room here on the planning commissions, when we see people come forward and then for whatever reason, and I understand things change, people have economic hardships and other things that happen that may deep six a project or a trend like coming out of COVID. Wait, we thought we had this, now we don't. And like you said, you got to revisit that in real time, right? You have to look at that. So economic vitality is high on my list. So I do look forward to conversations, either individually or with the team or whatnot, but to try to at least minimize that risk. And I know with business, there's always a risk. But a couple other things, now Franny mentioned transportation and looking at the smallest unit. And I agree, like in my neighborhood, and I'm not sure, I know Commissioner Shaw, who's now a trustee, he would complain about this too, or just comment on it, is, it's like Shel Silverstein's where the sidewalk ends. That's where I live, because like, they're not connected.
Yeah.
We need connectivity.
Yeah.
And so I know Ken's philosophy would be, if we're approving something, have them putting a sidewalk. And maybe there's not something there tomorrow, but like, it'll eventually, if you're consistent, it will connect. And I think that is a healthy goal to have. I think it's a forward-looking goal, right? It may not be built today, but in time, if you stay consistent, tomorrow it's gonna look awesome, right? So that's one thing and I do agree with something you mentioned too, Scott, like that Harmony Square, looking ahead, if you can envision in 5 years, that is gonna be a vibrant hub, right? And so I think there'll be discussions on what people's vision of that is in the future. But then the third I had, though, out of all this was safety. I mean, I get these alarming trends on social media from the Patch and other, where there's, something here at night at a Jewel parking lot, and I remember way back when Jewel was 24/7 and I could walk in after midnight and get something if I needed to. And now you have to go through the outdoor because they have the indoors locked. So safety's paramount too. And what does that look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I don't know. But those are some things
These are critical topics, all of them, yeah.
And again, you showed like 8 or 9. These are
they're
my
great.
top 3.
Yeah, right.
If you go down the line here, people probably shuffle the deck and what's meaningful to them and what they look forward to. But since you're inviting comments, I'm just at first blush, these are some of my comments. But I do agree, like, a picture's worth 1,000 words, so when there was talk about, like, being able to hand somebody the plan, the comprehensive plan, and it's color-coded, and, you can see the graphics, and from all stakeholders, right? The citizens of Tinley Park, the trustees, the mayor, and everybody in between. Then you're working together, right? It's transparent, and you can see as a community, where are we going?
Right.
And there's an organic push there, right? You can't dictate what a community is gonna be. The community dictates what that is. But a lot of good stuff. I think I like the outreach alternatives you guys put out there. I think the community engagement is critical, and I think websites do help to get, access to the community feedback. And then last, I just gotta say, like, I'm very interested, Franny, on the high crash intersections. I'm curious. I have some suspicions of the ones in Tinley Park, because I've seen some crashes in my lifetime here, so it's not like they're every day, but I'd like to hear what those are, because those are the critical things if you have pedestrians too, because now you have that, that human safety element that's amplified because of, and that's not the type of life we want amplified, right? Is risk. But yeah, so I don't know, a lot of good stuff I heard from you and your teams, and I will be quiet and see if any of the other commissioners have some comments to.
It's good. This is great. Good dialogue. Love it.
Throw back. I will begin over here, Commissioner Hamilton.
Yep, I like what I'm hearing. There's quite a bit of different components to this. It's going to take some time to digest. It seems like it's a complex process. It's going to be lengthy. As far as like key issues that I want to be focused on also, the issue of connectivity between neighborhoods, I mean, it is a glaring reality in Tinley. The sidewalks end, they begin again, I would like to see more ability for people to move around safely outside of their cars. And that's maybe one, and then the second one would be just economic vitality. You know, if people aren't able to afford housing and be able to make a living, there's not really much else that matters.
And we, you know, as I'm listening to these things, it's important for you to say, what information do you need to better understand these topics? So when you guys were talking about economic vitality, there's an educational lesson to why these things aren't working and why the market isn't delivering that, and why you can draw the pictures till you're blue in the face and believe it's coming and it's never coming. You can do the math and know right away it's not coming. But there's always that wishful thinking and, you know, political hope for whatever might come. You brought up the point of Harmony Square. The greatest success of Harmony Square has nothing to do with the beautiful place that's going to be. The greatest success is it's going to draw people here. And the very first thing your staff said to us, and Donna and Paula, God rest her soul, said to us, she goes, it's only going to work if we program the living heck out of that space and get people down here. And programming means we got to put dollars into having people bring events, have booths, have ice sculptures. 240 days a year there needs to be programming. Otherwise, it's a really expensive dead space.
Right. Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. So if you get people there,
right,
other people will come.
Right.
So you just got to, that's right, program it. And I remember at one of the marketing meetings where they were actually just calling the public, they said it falls apart, like you said, if it's not, if somebody from another city is like, I'm going to jump on the train and go to Tinley because there's something going on every Saturday, even if it's like 95% of the time. But if you're doing only thing like 40 or 30, that doesn't happen, right?
Right.
So it will drive. That train station is a great driver to bring people to that place,
Right.
Harmony Square,
Right.
the hub of.
It also brings not so great people.
And that'll be something that we have to think about in this whole
that's
thing,
the
right?
safety
That's the
issue,
safety
yeah.
and security issue in the
Safety and
community.
security issue, yeah.
It's everywhere. I'll tell you, it's every
It's
community.
everywhere. It's
Yeah.
not just here.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I.
But we wanna, you know, the most important thing about safety and security topic is listening to and understanding the facts behind it, not the conjecture or the fluffy stories that people make up. We really need to know the facts. And frankly, we need to talk to your police and emergency responders to understand the problems that they're seeing and what the real perception is. Because sometimes we hear the issue isn't necessarily, there's a mental health world out there that's affecting our communities. Right? There's all kinds of things that have changed for us, and we need to get our arms around that so we can educate and that you can be well informed to make good decisions about this. It's a big, huge topic.
Mm-hmm.
Did we hit them all? I'm sorry if we.
Oh, yeah.
Got them?
That was it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this side?
Yeah, so, I mean, I agree with Garrett on, you know, we want to build this beautiful downtown area, but yet we, originally, when the first building went up, we had retailers that wrote petitions saying to the developer that they would take the space, and then they backed out. And so now here we are with completely vacant places for 2 years.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
And-
Talking about on the other side of the tracks.
Yep.
South side of the track.
Boulevard,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now here we are, and we're gonna build another building,
Yeah.
and, you know, this whole square area, and you're gonna bring in the outside communities to our area to come to all these great events that we're gonna have. And it would be really nice to have retail space in those areas to bring money back to the community. You know, I hate seeing those spaces vacant, you know?
I'm going to interject because I know years back I was in Portland, and I don't know if they've changed since because that was like 20 some odd years ago. But I was visiting a friend, and then we all went out to like a vineyard because she told me that there was some rule or law in place that you couldn't keep building out your footprint. So you did have natural space that.
They have urban growth rings that don't allow you to expand development past certain areas. They keep greenery.
So then you had to, if you had a burnt-out building or a building that was being unused, you had no choice, if there was no other space, that to buy it and to reinvigorate it, renovate it from within and repurpose it. And to me, that's a smarter plan than, let's take thing and put up a building next to a building that switched owners 4 times in 4 years. Well, I don't-
Still is empty,
Yeah, but, I mean, and even there's some issues with that down Harlem, right? And so I just, that's one thing, as being on this side here, part of the plan commission, it really does rub me the wrong way, because how many times do you go to, like, when things are full and vibrant, the experience is much more fun, right? And people want to come back, but empty storefronts, especially in that hub, like, and I don't envision that in 5 years, those being empty, though, I don't. But how do we get from here to there?
Right.
And I think it's to understand the details of why or what's going on with, not just, I mean, you can go into specific projects and specifically in the downtown where we're going to hopefully come up with kind of that sub-area vision of, okay, here's what we want to see. And then the goal of this plan is for that to be make sure we know that can be a reality.
Right.
And then if we do have struggles, that's going to come up through this process to say, what happened there? How do we learn from it? Is that maybe it is just a one-time thing. Maybe it's a owner or a property owner.
Yeah.
We run into that a lot here, the quality of property owners. Do they want to fill their space? Because we have properties where property owners maybe have owned it for a very long time. It's been in the family, and maybe they're not motivated to lease to what the community wants. That's a struggle in a lot of communities. So, especially our age, where you can't force somebody to put something into their property they don't want to, or maybe they're not motivated. But that's some bigger picture stuff here of going, what's going on? Maybe what we're actually seeing is there's a big demand of people wanting to come into the downtown, but maybe there's rates, and that's where they're saying, how do we look at the market? What does that support? Is there a gap, and do we need to talk about that? Or if there is no gap, then what else is going on? Why isn't this working? So we're talking about one building, but you can also look at a couple others in the downtown or even elsewhere in Tinley, but you can see good examples of that too, where you kind of see, especially 159th and Harlem has kind of started to come alive, where you had these buildings that were starting to deteriorate, a shopping center that wasn't looking good, and you can see there is a market there. There was some incentives behind some of it, but now it's really, once you kind of start to get that momentum, the market can then take care of it. So I think it's important, though, to say, okay, if we're going to have a vision, how do we make sure we can actually get there? Because if the market can't support it by itself, we need to know as a community, okay, if we do need to inject some public funds or a TIF district or something else, how do we do that? Because we need to make sure that's in place ahead of time before we start trying to do something that's set up to fail.
Right.
I want to piggyback off that just at the end there. Another thing in the comp plan overall, and at the very end, usually we go through this, like finding out what's going on, collecting issues, creating a vision. Very ends an implementation strategies, and what will happen is, say, we find these issues, we list them out, and then, this set of experts will give us guidelines into short, midterm, and long-term strategies to alleviate the situations. So just kind of like what Dan was saying, is like, okay, this is the issue, this is why it's the issue, and then here are your strategies that we as a staff, we as a community can start looking at. And once this plan's adopted, those are things we can start working on. It is like our jobs to start implementing the plan over the next 10, 20 years. So that's also part of this.
And why it's a living document here too, why Scott's saying revisit this each year, because the market should, I mean, SB Freeman's gonna be back in here every year going, what is the market looking for? Because they might say, hey, you guys were needing to incentivize this. Actually, hey, that's completely taken off by itself now. And you really see as retail used to be able to support itself, no problem, to build a regional shopping center. There wasn't many incentives behind those when those were built, and now you kind of look at the way things are shifting. And then the realities of Cook County and Will County are very real too, because it's every single day. If we have somebody doing something in Cook County, they're also before our board asking for a tax reclassification, and there's effects of those too. When you talk about incentives, when you talk about reclassifications, you might be looking at one project going, yeah, we really want that one thing, but how does that affect everything else? Are you starting to move markets that are actually making other things you want harder? So each of those little details is hopefully where we come out of this and have real strategies, real implementation strategies in a realistic vision that we can get to. And again, if we start seeing failure in some area, it can kind of start to determine why that is. Is it we were overambitious, we didn't know the details, or the developer didn't? Or is it something else? Is it a property owner that isn't motivated? And then how do we fix that going forward? You want to be able to make property owners motivated. And a good way to do that is money, right? If there's a market out there to either sell it and get somebody who's motivated, or start making money on that property and filling it with something that works.
Okay.
The other thing is community engagement. I have found that in the past 7 years being on the planning commission, that it's very difficult to get people engaged here. It's always, oh, we didn't know that this was available, or we didn't know that this was here, or so. Yeah, good luck to marketing it to where it needs to be to get people to be engaged, because it's very difficult here for some reason. I'm not sure why, but it just, even just us doing announcements for different things, they'll argue that they didn't see it anywhere, and it's been posted 7 different places. So that's a big thing, is getting them engaged in.
Yeah, you're not alone. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's kind of what I would call civic apathy. People are like, I got other things to do besides do that.
Yeah.
So what we're doing now is we're taking the bull by the horn, and we're not waiting for them to come to us. We're going to them.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to church, we're going to go to high school, we're going to go to a fair, we're just going to show up and say, here we are, and give us your information. You saw Siraj, who was one of our project manager, Siraj on the street, right? We just went on the street on Saturday in Old Town in the city, and he's just interviewing people like Jimmy Kimmel does. Hey, and people stop and talk to you. It works.
Yeah, oh yeah. So, funny little story this past week, I happened to be on TikTok, and this woman, I'm not sure how the algorithm picked up, but she was looking for a place to put her new restaurant, and she was looking at downtown Lamont, and Tinley Park came up on. I don't know if it came up because of my map or what, but I bleeped in and commented, and I was like, we have a great downtown area, blah, blah, blah. I really promoted it. And so she was gonna reach out to see about putting it like in the downtown area.
Give her my number.
Yeah, right. So, I just think that
Yeah, my work
there's
number, please.
definitely an algorithm there with TikTok.
Yeah.
If he's out on the street and he's doing interviews like during the summertime at one of the things that happens, like that's a good way to push it out to the younger generations to
Yeah.
get them engaged.
Yeah, well, I mean, the beauty from an old guy who's been doing this for a long time, we got a lot of young people. They know how to use all that technology. They live that life every day,
Yep.
and it works.
Yep.
I'm the old dog going, oh, yeah, right, I don't have time for that. They do it, and they're getting tons of response off of it. So I believe in it now, and I don't believe in a full world of communicating through social media. I still believe in face-to-face, but if that's what it takes to get to certain audiences, hey, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, she sent me a personalized message and she said, you know, you're the 20th person that told me downtown Tinley. So she was like,
That's awesome.
Okay, I can set you up with people if
Yeah.
you really, you know, are interested in,
Yeah.
you know. So she actually came down and did a tour of downtown Tinley. She even posted it on her TikTok, so.
And
It's
see,
very
and
interesting.
now back to the conversation of retail, and there's a personality in a place where retail belongs and it doesn't belong. And you need to define the personality of your different retail areas. The type of retailer that wants to be on Harlem Avenue is different than wants to be downtown.
Oh, she
The
wanted.
shop owner, the business proprietor is a different type of person. And you can't make one go into the other. It doesn't really work that way. And you can't drive what you're trying to get through zoning regulations and codes. It's a natural thing that occurs. So you got to find the right entrepreneurs. You got to really almost interview these people, find if they're the right fit for where you're trying to go, and find the pathway for them to meet success. And a lot of that, these building owners don't care. They're trying to hit their numbers. They got their property tax, their unit net retail. Fran and I can tell you a story. We work with developers too. They'll tell you exactly what they don't like and why they don't want to be here, and they don't like your codes for this. You know, I'll be honest with you, the empty storefront over there, that is the vision of everybody is we want to be like Europe, first floor retail and the people live above. That's okay. That's what we should have. I 100% agreement, but it doesn't always work economically. And these developers are like, yeah, if that's what it takes, I'll put first floor retail. Don't worry, I'll put some. They couldn't care less if it ever fills up because all they wanted is a residential above it. They're pacifying you to get to that. Now, we still want it filled up and we want it to be active. We got to find a way to like hold them to that or find a way to underwrite and subsidize it so we can bring those rents down and get the right type of little mom and pops to come into there.
Yeah.
There's a formula. It's not a.
And especially from the start, because
Yeah.
I always, once you get somebody in those spaces, once it's built out, once
Yeah.
it's been activated, then it's much easier to backfill that again. It's
Yeah.
that initial push. And I think that was a learning experience of like, hey, how do we make sure going forward that we get these, however we can do that, to make sure that's in from the beginning. If they're showing $0 rents on commercial, then we know from the beginning that's not even built into their pro forma. That's not even a problem in itself. It's how do we get there? But
And you don't want
sort of
empty
the communication, which I think is
Right.
very.
But you don't want an empty street frontage. You don't want parking decks all the way down on the ground. You want life on the street. That's the goal. No matter what, that's the goal. You just got to figure out how you get there.
The one thing I'd say too is like, and I've called over there just to see, and I believe they want to do like a 2-year lease for those businesses, and it's not even, they have to put up the drywall and they didn't even pour concrete slabs, okay, it's just stone.
Are there hoods inside too? It's supposed to be a restaurant?
Yeah, it was supposed to originally, because we.
Careful a little bit to
Yeah.
not dive too much.
But this is,
We're obviously still working
this is
with-
my point. My point is,
Yeah.
Durbin's, I believe, my understanding, I could be wrong, they raised the rents, so they moved out. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But if you have a 2-year lease there, say they do build it out 6 months from now, and somebody goes in, when this is happening 2.5 years later, are they gonna, wow, I'm gonna raise the lease on you, and then the person's like, well, this is too high for me, I'm leaving now. So like, are you gonna be back to square one, because you have this weird, game? It's almost like,
And it
they,
can happen. I mean, if you, a lot of people point to like downtown Naperville. Now, it's a weird situation because it's not really gonna be replicated since it's so much of a destination. But you see a lot of turnover in businesses. That's not even necessarily a bad thing. Yes, everybody likes a business that's been there for a long time. But sometimes that can mean a good thing. It means you have this kind of active environment and it's a place people want to be, and it means it's in demand. So that can kind of keep the businesses fresh. And some of them move over and move up and they get a bigger space somewhere else. So
Right.
it doesn't always mean you're closing down a business. But it's understanding what's happening there. Is it a good thing? Is it a positive
I mean-
changeover, or is it force of that? Because rents are going to go up, right? Property values go up, taxes go up.
Right.
But are they going up at the right rate, or is it someone being greedy, trying to overcharge and
I mean, if,
build in a lease that benefits them over a business?
isn't it like the market, if you have something listed at this and you got no takers, then you probably are pricing something high. You're pricing yourself out of the market, so to speak. So I do think there's something wrong with whatever that initial value is, and I mean, I don't know what they, the nuts and bolts of what they need for it to, on the other end.
Those
but
are
I'm just
things,
saying.
those are topics, I mean, I could see a whole evening talking about this topic, frankly, because it's all about making your downtown, that's gonna be a topic in itself, making your downtown a successful, strong, long-term vision, right? And there's gonna be dynamics of talking about market and development, economic, all the things that Daniel's talking about, that's how it works.
I can't see where they're gonna put the bare bones drywall and everything else, and then somebody's gonna come in and buy their own infrastructure and all that, like their tables and chairs and that, and get a loan for that, and then 2 years later, they're like, we're bringing this up, and you're like, they might be like, well, I think it's easier if there's some sort of ownership there, but, I mean, leasing, I understand it gives you flexibility, but,
Some cities I know have, I forgot what it's called, but I know New York is big on it. They can't increase.
Oh, they,
Rent control.
tax,
Yeah, rent control.
rent abatement, tax,
Yeah,
yeah, freeze.
Yep.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's something that
Yeah.
is done in any suburb or any of that, but I mean,
yeah.
who knows if that would help.
This,
Yeah,
the topic is every community is going through
Yeah.
this. You're not the only.
Yeah.
Because if you get somebody good in, don't shoo them away because of 10 or 11 greed, right? Like, please, so.
Talking about communication though, which is kind of where this started, I think there's a big emphasis on that, and that's one of the things I think Lakota actually shined on their interview was how do we get out there and actually make sure this is a community plan? That you guys are the steering committee, so we're bringing stuff here to kind of help guide stuff. This isn't gonna be your plan, it's not gonna be the village board's plan, it's gonna be the community's plan, where I think we wanna really take into account what does this community want. So to get that, it's not gonna be asking people to come here to Village Hall at 7 o'clock on Thursdays and sit here. I think we know that's not gonna work, so, it's Lakota and our consultants here are here to help us, but I think you're gonna see us out there on Saturday nights on a music night, trying to get people, hey, what are you thinking? Have some materials there to actually help kind of create their thought process of what they want to see.
What about like
where we're going.
doing like a QR code with the Survey Monkey?
We have all that.
Yeah.
Those are like baselines for us now. That's like a baseline starting point for us to do.
I'm in marketing, so
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah.
It's a big thing for
And
us
I'm
too.
not a huge, like, we've obviously deal with the community, but I'm not an expert in it, and that's why we hired Scott. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
'cause, like,
No, we-
have done a lot of
We'll
these, and they know what
act-
works, what doesn't.
Yeah, we'll lay out a whole engagement plan.
Yeah.
We'll share that with you, like, here are all the pathways of where we're gonna go. We talked about, we're gonna build a brand for this so that people know. And we just gotta get it out there. We gotta get, so people think about it or know about it and wanna either engage with us, otherwise we're gonna go at them. I just, there's some areas we can go and it's a layup. Schools are great, because kids, man, they'll open up to you. You know, if they get a break in a class, don't have to show up for class for half hour, they're all about talking.
Hashtag
I would totally
don't
agree that we need to, have the community, totally be engaged and be part of it. So they can say, hey, I was part of that, And then also seeing, to see how the plan fits within
Right,
our existing Tinley,
right, that's right.
Because, it's not new, right? We've been here for a while now, so I think, one of your little circles was talking about land use, I believe. So I think that's what we have to look at, like, what's working and what's not working. That's
Right.
what we need to know and make it fit within the community.
Right.
I think that's what it is.
Are there any, and when we talk about land use, are there any areas that are very sensitive in the community, areas that we really should focus on? There's particular relationships that aren't quite right or that we should be thinking? And it could be you against another community too. It doesn't have to be within.
No, like for me, in my opinion, we want to have the downtown to be like the epicenter, right? But then our current code, the legacy code, to me, it's not quite there. I think it's like hard to build there, because too strict, I don't know, to me, I look at, when you're looking at something existing, maybe there'll be certain nodes that you could create that would attract something. But not to say, okay, we have to demolish it and bring all the storefronts to the street. I mean, that looks great, but
You're saying let it be a little bit more natural and organic than
yeah,
prescribed.
something, make something, intentional.
Sure.
Instead of, hey, we have the city here, we want to build, and it's an after effect, structure, whatever, but no, make it on purpose,
Yeah, I got it.
But I think, but I hear everything that's great, your framework, your process of, you want to dial it down to the minutia, and I think that's the community,
Yeah.
They got to be part of it. They got they gotta take ownership, and say, yeah, this is gonna be great.
And that, what you just said is the most important thing. They gotta take ownership. I mean, they can't come here and complain and moan if they've had ample opportunity over the last year when we're putting this together and say, I didn't know about that. So not only do we have to listen and engage people, we have to document what we've heard and pump it back out there so that they can hear and that we can point to, oh, no, it's out there on the website. Oh, no, we sent a flyer out on everybody's water bill. Oh, no, it was at the concert last week over at the plot. It's not a like shame them thing, but it's a like, hey, take responsibility for yourself. Don't blame everybody else.
For sure.
Any other questions on this
No,
side?
that's it.
I'm gonna go to this side. You guys have been waiting for a long time. Commissioner Gaskell.
I don't really have an opinion one way or the other about this thing because I don't know. I have to see it work before I can.
Yeah.
I can't just listen to you and you give me your word. This is going to all, be, garden party. But my only question really is, how much is this costing the village?
The process?
Yeah, your contract or whatever it would be.
Our contract? I honestly don't have my proposal here. Maybe you guys remember what I can't remember.
Yeah, it went out to the RFP, I wanna say it was like around 200,000. I mean, kind of separate from what we're talking about, but the goal is over 2 years. How do we work through this process?
So the whole 2 years is like right around $200,000?
Yeah. It was
Complete?
Yeah. I'd have to look
Sounds
up.
about right.
But yeah, the contract went through the RFP process, went to the village board for approval to go, okay, what's the best group it is to lead here? So we went through that process to look at all the different consultants that can do this for a community our size. I think we got, was it 6?
We had six different firms enter in, and so in an RFP process, they give us their proposal, we sent out the things we're looking for, they told us how they're gonna accomplish it, and that included a fee schedule and all the amount of hours it's gonna take to complete that or how much they think. So then throughout that process, we graded their scope, their approach, and their time frame and their fees. And through that grading process, we came down to 2 and then interviewed them and picked Lakota. So they weren't the highest, they weren't the lowest in terms of fees, but we felt they could accomplish what we are looking for, especially after 24 years of previous plan, so.
And that's what, sometimes it gets easier after, and it's maybe a quicker process if you're doing this every 5-10 years. You got something to pick up from and you're in a little better place. Go look at our 2000 comprehensive plan. It's essentially useless at this point. It doesn't even show Brookside Glen. Like you're missing a third of the community at this point. So it's kind of interesting. Talking about the money and the consultant side of this was like, it ranged pretty wide from like 100,000 to like 900,000 in some ridiculous proposals, but it got us to, it was a pretty clear we had kind of 2 consultants that really have the quality, have the experience, show what they can do, really help run the show, since we don't have all this experience. Our staff members are here doing day-to-day things, so we don't have that market-driven analysis that we can get from SB Freeman or even from Van, and we use Robinson Engineering still, so they're our consultant on projects that we do. So it's just really, this was the group that kind of had the best expertise to get us to a plan, get us to something that's actually going to benefit this community long term. So it wasn't all about the money. If you did that, we'd have like a 6-month I don't even know what that $100,000 proposal was, because it wasn't very good. It didn't really hit what I think would be a good plan for this community. So we did go through that process to make sure we got the right group here.
I understand that when you talk about high and cheap, I on a personal basis, like when I need a contract or something like that, I'll get 3 estimates, and I always take the middle one, because this one's charging too much, and this one probably isn't going to do the job I expect. So I always like to get that middle of the road guy, and
we had a pretty good group to kind of, and even analysis techniques to go, okay, which group do we want? How are they gonna hit what we need here? And get us something that works, not something that's just gonna sit on a shelf and we spent that money and we don't get to use it. We wanted to get the best bang for our buck, so. And again, for a community our age, I think it's important to go through this, but we should have done this long ago. We need to figure that out, so I think this was the hopefully the right group to do it, and they've been great to work with so far, and I think will get us to a goal, a plan that's really gonna be something cool for this community to go, this is ours, this isn't this plan commission's, it's not the village boards, it's where this community wants to go.
And I think the timing is right, actually. I mean, I know the other one's old, but like, and you've mentioned this before at previous plan commissions and said, I can't wait to start this, and I think it is the right time. There's a lot of changes that happened even 4 years ago, right? And so, this will probably set us pretty well into the near future, because everything changes, but the near future.
And there's steps after this as we get the implementation side. I know one of them is going to be, and it's something I think a lot of you will know as we bring projects here and people ask for 8 variations, is our code was written, our zoning code side of this was written in 1978. It's not very reflective sometimes of what we want to see. So this is the first step to that. A lot of people can see that on a day-to-day basis and go, well, that specific code section doesn't work anymore. But this is really that first approach going, where do we want? That zoning code's supposed to be implementing what we want to see out there. What type of uses, what form do we want things to take? And so this is really that first step to say, okay, what do we want back here before we dive into the details of where your fence needs to be on your lot? We need to kind of know the bigger picture. So, that's something that I've pushed for, I know, since I've been here, is we need to take this step first to really get us to make sure we're on the code side of things we're at as well.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, one of the biggest complaints I hear, and we need to get a handle on this, is the number of vacancies we have in town in the commercial and properties. That's everybody knows all the vacancies. And then they ask me, why are we building another shopping center? Why are we building another strip mall? We've got all these vacancies. Shouldn't we be filling them? Well, yeah, I say, yeah, we should, but I don't have an answer. So we need to find an answer to that.
Well, and I think it's as he was saying, kind of digging into what those facts are too, and what the situations are with them. Because people say, we have all this vacancy. I think we just pulled the vacancy rate. We're like under 4%. We're under the Chicago region on it. So sometimes there's glaring ones that people keep pointing to. One of those was Cardinal Fitness for a long time, right, in downtown, and that was a problem. The problem there was a tax structure where that was condoized and it had really high taxes, and we had to figure out and find the right person who understood what tax reclassifications were and was willing to chop it up and do the things that the market, it could have been filled that whole time. The market was saying it could get filled, but we had to figure out how to get to that point. So the actual percentage of vacancies, and we pulled that today, is actually really good here. It's pretty low. You're not gonna have a 0% vacancy in most towns.
No, but I don't believe it's 4% either.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It depends where you're looking at, right?
Well, you're talking village-wide.
What's that?
You said it was 4% village-wide.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't see that. Because I can't drive by a strip mall or something where there aren't 2 or 3 vacancies.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you chat that, or you add all that up.
It's looking, what are those numbers, what are the facts, and then looking into why don't those work?
I will say this on the Cardinal, because I think you do have to tell people, no, you're not a fit. And for whatever trends this maybe pulls up, and the Cardinal Fitness, I remember they had a free trial for 5 days. You could go in there, work out for free. I did. It was right by my house. I thought this was good. I gave the manager, Mike, a $100 bill that 5th day. And he said, no, don't put that away. We don't take cash, only cards. And I said, you're telling me, I know that's the standard now, but I said, you're telling me my money's no good, but my credit is? I said, that's a bad business philosophy. And sure enough, they went belly up. So I think you gotta say no. I know people look at near tax dollars right now in the near, here and now, but that may be at the expense of something else that is a better use for a longer term, you know.
And that's what, there's a lot of change there, right? So retail space, if you look at that, if you just looked at retail space, you'd have a much higher percentage. But every ounce for medical space is filled right now. So it depends, are you looking at commercial, are you looking at office, are you looking at retail? All those percentages change, but that's how we need to make decisions too going forward. Are we building a retail center? Maybe that isn't the right fit.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe it's office, maybe it's something that mixes those as, hey, we want to get some retail because that's a quality of life thing. But hey, to supplement and make that work, we also need to make sure there's some service uses in here and things that do fill up those quickly.
Right.
So it just depends what number and what you're looking at.
And I will defend, like, I think you're right, it's kind of a where you live thing. You kind of focus on the one or two vacancies that affects you, right? But, I mean, I was doing an environmental investigation over in Woodridge, and their whole shopping mall to the north there, and I can't remember, was like a ghost town. So we don't have anything like that. I mean, the closest thing we had for that was Kmart, which is being reinvigorated with Pete's. So I think we are not like totally glaring. It's just it's kind of that, okay, well, if I go to Jewel, I'll notice if something along that strip mall is out, right? And even the Durbins and stuff like that. But yeah, but it is townwide. Any other comments, Jim?
No, that's all I got to say.
Okay, Commissioner Sepisi.
I gotta say at this point, in an hour and a half or whatever we are into this, my head is spinning. Now, that's a good thing, because my head spins a lot. Which means I'm thinking about that. But
The
I'm
Exorcist.
thrilled by the fact that the process is coming. I think it's either gonna be a lot of fun or involve a lot of alcohol. But the
Those aren't
idea
mutually
that we're gonna
exclusive.
The idea that we're gonna use TikTok, we're gonna use all the social media, and that we're not gonna wait for them to come to us. We're gonna go to them. You're right, no excuses, no reasons for not knowing what's going on.
Right.
And if this is what it takes to get people involved and interested, that's where it's gotta be. I gotta tell you, and you guys know this, because just a month or two ago, we went rounds here with a bunch of people that wanted to keep a bar that's falling down. They wanted to keep it up.
Oh, yeah.
They want to rebuild it.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a lot of tough opposition in a lot of places to a lot of the things that are gonna really make this place go forward. So I think adding in the TikToks, adding in the young people and stuff, I think that's gonna be a big plus. I'm excited.
You gotta offset, you gotta weigh it so that you don't get one crowd that drives the conversation.
Exactly right.
But you gotta listen to them, and you gotta make them feel meaningful in the conversation, because if you isolate them, they get more mad.
That's it.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
Thank you.
For being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good comments. Commissioner Stockless.
Well, a lot of the questions I might have had have already been asked and answered.
Well, we'll come to you first next time.
Yeah, I will.
Well, part of it is, how much buildable space do we have in Tinley Park now?
That's a good question.
And where is it at? You know, a lot of it may be along the I-80 corridor. You know, you've already talked about the retails or the empty spaces, and how do we get people into those places to fill the vacancy rates, you know? And retail is one thing. Medicals is the biggest mover right now. Medical seems to be building everywhere. And of the buildable space, are we looking for ownership, or are we looking for rentals?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, because a lot of people say, we don't need rentals, we need ownership.
Right.
I agree with that.
I do too. I think
Right.
businesses
You
do
can't
better
get into that.
if they own the property.
Yeah.
It may not be economically the way to go.
And the last thing is accountability,
Your rent
because
isn't gonna go up.
a lot of people in this room, me personally, have been dealing with a project that is going on 7 years, and it's gonna be another 3 years if they finish it. And it was kicked out, and accountability meaning build what the plans call for, and not what you want to do until you get caught.
Mhm.
And part of this, wasn't with this planning commission or any planning commission, it has to do with the builder. And the builder has to be accountable. You say this should take 18 to 36 months to build, well, why is it, now we're talking 7 years later and you're still talking another 3 years to finish? So.
Okay.
That's true, like timetables on, a lot of our meetings will have discussed timetables, and we know sometimes there's extenuating circumstances, and, COVID kind of shut down a lot of things in supply chain, but I agree, there should be some sort of reasonable expectations, and then there possibly should be some sort of punitive, things if you're not keeping on that construction schedule,
They
right?
do that in road projects.
I know, they do that in a lot of
Road
construction
have
projects.
Huge penalties if you don't finish on time.
Yeah.
We do a lot of schools too, and so these kids gotta be into school at this time, so, you can't slow foot it, right? And, I know every project's
These
different.
Building plans that get rejected because it wasn't what was approved at the, either the board level
Right.
or the planning commission level.
Right. You can't do the, Trojan horse, right? Here's my approved and I built something different, but, for sure. Any other comments?
That's all I got.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Merrick?
All right. So I'll probably beat the dead horse I always beat, but nobody else has beat it yet tonight. So, so Dan knows that I volunteered for the planning commission because I wanted to be a part of this. It's the single thing, I'm happy to weigh in on zoning and what a building looks like that has light manufacturing or whatever, but that's not very exciting to me, but this part is. So I'm really interested in mass transit-driven economic development, and I'm trained as a historian and political scientist with a focus in political economy and economic development, so I sometimes nerd out and share articles with Dan and the team over there on some of these things about the economic impact of mass transit centered development. But I'm also super interested in automobility and creating spaces for people that like to run, bike, walk, and have communities and be able to walk, for example, from where I live over to the library or the metro station without getting killed, which I can manage, but I can't imagine somebody who has had a walker or a cane or something actually making it safely across that crosswalk where I live. And then thinking about the other part that kind of strikes me, and it fits in with the kind of the jokes today and stuff about the park, but I worry also about political partisanship, right? And I feel that maybe I'm not around the community long enough to know this, that's driven, that those issues are driven more about political partisanship than they are about a shared vision for the future of the community. And I know, for example, that whatever the park district does, it has to come through the village anyways, so I'm not really worried about it.
I doubt it.
They don't have to do planning through the village unless they become a different village. They wouldn't have to. That'd be interesting.
Hastings and Rita have introduced legislation to take everything away from the village.
Okay, well, that's, which is also regional level political partisanship, right? So, but still, same sort of stuff, right? But that there's huge space over there also waiting for a bigger vision for development, that if we do this right, we could win people over towards a shared vision of that space and how it might be used to everyone's benefit. So, so those are big picture things that I'm interested in. And I think that we can do a lot together working through those issues. I know there's lots of other ones, but those are the top priorities that I have. We have like lots of biking trails that aren't hooked up, connected to the other biking trails. It would make a huge difference if those were actually connected and in ways that were safe to use too. So.
And I'll even go further, even, some of those sidewalks and whatnot, if they're, as long as they're also ADA accessible. You mentioned guys with, people with walkers and stuff trying to get, I'm assuming across 80th, I'm not sure. But like,
that's what I'm talking about.
yeah, I mean, it has to be friendly for everybody. You mentioned, diversity and inclusion in that, and I think, that falls under that umbrella, right? It should be something the whole community can enjoy, from the 10-year-old on his bike to, somebody walking across the street with a walker, and they can do it safely.
Yeah. The topics keep changing all the times too. None of us are too old to keep learning or learning a new trick in the world that's changing around us. And one of the things that became very aware to me over the last year was when we talk about inclusion, we talk about ADA, there's a whole world of people out there that are intellectually challenged citizens who are capable of managing their own lives, but they don't have the ability to do it. They're the ones that you see bagging groceries or working at Dunkin' Donuts. They may have some form of autism or some form of neuroatypical issues, but they want to live active lives. They're part of the conversation too. There's hundreds of thousands of people. And interesting conversation we had in another community is there are an entire workforce that can support a lot of the positions that nobody wants to work in anymore in some of our retail and food and beverage components. So we need to think about them. How do we get them to work? We're thinking about putting them in these transit-supported communities because that's their lifeblood. They want to live independent lives, but their parents are 65, 70. They've been living at home all these years. There's not enough facilities to provide for these people to live in. And so it's becoming a whole new topic to think about. Every community has folks like this. They live with their families right in your community. So those are the things, those are the new things that are out there. They're going to constantly evolve.
And maybe I'll say one last thing too around that. So this reminds me of, there's a famous book called Bowling Alone in America, right, which a lot of you probably know. It strikes me that these are places, the idea that people used to all go every Wednesday night for the bowling league and the entire community get together and people would talk. These are the spaces in which we can actually work across difference, right? And so the ability to get out into the community and work with people to build a common shared vision in spite of different beliefs and ideas and backgrounds. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to take part in this.
Great, awesome.
Okay, those are a lot of comments.
It's a lot of comments.
Peppered in there. I know.
I love it. I mean, that's great. I mean, we're going to have lots of them. I think we just wanted to gauge it. And we had some other questions. We can dive into them. We don't have to dive into them. You can take them. You can think about them. I think what's important is we want to engage each of you and find out where are your hot spots, what are the things we need to think about, but also have you know that you can ping us through this whole process. Hey, I was thinking about something's bothering me. There's a topic that didn't come up in any of your slideshows we need to talk about in our town. I know there's some bad will on this whole park district thing. We need to understand that so that we can maybe add positivity to that. I don't know. I don't want to go somewhere where we're not supposed to go. But the reality of it is, please get us your thoughts. Work through this team right here, and they'll get it back to us. We want to make sure it goes to them and back to us for various FOIA-able reasons. But we want to engage you in a good conversation. We want you to use us as a sounding board. We want you to challenge us to go find the information. If we don't have it, we'll go find it.
Yeah.
It's out there. Somebody has it. This is your opportunity to really create a great story for the community. It's a great community already. We could all pick at it and say it's bad, but you've all chosen to live here and raise your families and have a successful life here. There's obviously something really good about it. So we only want to make it better moving forward. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I don't want to, I can keep you going longer, but I'm going to make the assumption that 9 o'clock might be the end of it for you all.
It's probably the bewitching hour, yeah.
This isn't going to be the last one.
No, we got a lot more.
We got a lot coming, so thanks, Scott. And
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody on our comprehensive planning team here, because I think we're going in a great direction for Tinley. Like Scott said, we're going to make a great community even better coming out of this.
Well, we appreciate all your time and for putting all this together, and this is going to be a good thing for our community, so.
Yeah, we look forward to meeting with all of you too. We're going to start getting our interview schedules and our key stakeholder lists together so we can start setting up some times to get with all of you.
In person, face-to-face, or on
Love to
Zoom?
do it in person if we can. We're gonna set days, whole days and time schedules, have a cup of coffee. We don't have to meet here, we could go to the coffee shop. We kinda like to mix it up a little bit, because people like to talk in their own zone sometimes, so.
And it's gonna be you guys, it'll be other taxing bodies too, so Park District keeps coming up, right? Like, they all, take the mental health center out of it though. Our parks in our community really can make Tinley Park, right? We've all
100%.
been in them. So you can't plan Tinley Park and ignore.
Right.
and
We're
it's not
all
even the Tinley Park
stakeholders here,
Park
so
District.
it-
We have the Frankfurt
yeah.
Square Park District, we
100%.
Mokina Park District. So we want to reach out to them, see what their visions are.
Correct.
How that kind of really relates to everything we have going on as a community. So school districts, also very important, right?
Correct,
How we
yeah.
plan for schools, so. I think we're reaching out to all those to get it, and interestingly, like Frankfurt Square Park District actually invited me and Pat Carr to go talk with them recently, because they're doing their own planning, right? We need to sync that up, so
Right.
where they're at, they're maybe a few steps ahead of us, also have a much shorter timeframe on park planning, but hey, does that mirror ours? And maybe at the end of ours, it doesn't even fully meet that, and they have to go back and maybe make some adjustments. So we want to really work with the community as a whole. You guys obviously will be a big part of it, but so will our businesses, so will the taxing bodies. So looking forward to it.
Sounds good.
Thank you all.
guys. Yeah,
Thanks
thank you for your time.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the good of the order. Do you have anything, staff, for the good of the order?
Just really quick, by Messina Court, which was the Odyssey home asking for a variation that was denied at the village board. Brixmore Phase 2, which is kind of where Ross Dress for Less is going to be going on that side of it, as well as some other retailers coming in. That's hopefully starting soon, so they're very, very close to just a full permit, but they're already even starting some interior demo work to really get that going. So that'll be everything south of where Amazon Fresh was at.
So then do they move like the Planet Fitness and all those people, do they move them out?
No,
Into a temporary space?
it's mostly gonna be where there's already businesses, is basically gonna be a facade facelift that will tie it in with everything
Okay.
else. There's nothing interior happening there. But it's gonna tie in the facades to everything. And then they're even doing some work on the outlot building that they own over there. That's got like Batteries Plus in it,
Mhm.
so that'll
Yeah.
tie it too.
Oh, perfect.
So, looking forward to that. It's, obviously, there's some vacancy in there. We have this Amazon Fresh thing that will hopefully.
going?
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed this year is what we've been hearing, so. And they do have a permit. I know that's been, so they have a permit to do more work, and if it's not issued, it's approved. We're just waiting on contractors, so. They're gonna be going in there and doing some additional work. They've reopened a lot of ones that they had
Well,
closed.
that's good.
Done this. I think they learned a lot of lessons off of failure early on, and now they're adjusting. So it looks like they're reopening stores again. Ours is very far along, so I don't think there's a lot to do in there. It was almost ready to open the last time with,
Yeah,
once
they
they got
had signage up and
coolers, it would have been
everything.
open and staffed it, so looking forward to that. But looking forward to Brixmore just continuing
Finishing
on
it
with
off.
improving that shopping center. It'll be the first time that center has been in transition since it was built in phases too. It'll be the first time we just, at
Fully
least the
completed.
feel, the look, the
Yeah.
landscaping will all be tied together. So I'm excited because I think that is really, it started a kind of a chain reaction and it's just continuing over there. With that as well, we have a new property owner that bought the shopping center across from it, where it doesn't include Aldi, but everything around Aldi. And I think that's gonna be a very positive thing for that center as well. So there's been some vacancies. I don't know when Old Country Buffet closed, but the inside of it looks like it hasn't been touched since like 1995 or early 2000. So looking forward to them filling some of those vacancies and we started off with a pretty positive relationship with that new group, so. Besides that, even the Harmony Square Plaza, the permits are in for that from the village, obviously. But that's moving forward and we're looking forward to everything kicking off in March really is when you're gonna start seeing, everything happening out there to a large degree. So there's some movement, there's some utility work, there's been some demo up to this point, but March will really kind of be that kickoff, after St. Patrick's Day Parade, so. Last two things, obviously there's the pause fire, so we're working with them, hopefully making sure they get all the right permits, everything's done correctly, because we don't want to make this any less safe, trying to fix some things, but we're looking forward to working with them, getting them back open, so.
Who's that?
Pause.
Oh, yeah.
So they're closed right now, but we're hoping that'll be a quicker turnaround. Unfortunately, our nonprofits here have been hit by fires, but our fire department's done an awesome job with those. They happen, and the responses have been really good.
Speaking of that,
So.
New to you, is it ever gonna open again?
It's supposed to be coming up here. I don't want to be, they've got volunteer and staffing stuff in the background too. I think the inside is ready to open. They're just working through some things on an operational level.
I think it was supposed to be like February or March.
That'd be good.
And then Crema Coffee is still in the train station. They changed their hours a little bit, so they're open till 5 now, I think 7 to 5. So that has made it a lot easier for me to go work
It's
there
really
and
good.
get some things done.
I mean, I have to rave about it. The coffee's fantastic.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
It's really
No, I'm
good.
not the only
I'll have to
one.
tell my wife.
The breakfast sandwiches are amazing too.
I'll tell my wife, she loves coffee.
And I'm not an expert in coffee, but she's, like Casey talks about it like it's her second, and she goes and picks the beans and like they're their own roasters, so it's not something that's, she's going to Jewel and picking up a bag of something and brewing it in there like it's actually coffee.
It's pretty
I
good.
I drink it, I know that, like it tastes
Ron comes up, yeah.
It's really good, but she's got food there too.
The
so
breakfast
she's got
sandwiches are really
breakfast and lunch in there. It's really kind of changed the vibe of that, and it's kind of unique because we were talking about they're going to change out some of the lights in there, and that's really changed. There's no longer a ticket agent selling tickets there, so she's still there in a customer service role, but it's a kiosk now in there. And so you kind of think of that, we have this beautiful public building in the center of downtown. It's now going to be an active coffee shop. That's like the primary use of it as compared to a train station, but still a great place if you're waiting for the train to be nice and warm inside and get coffee or
So
snack.
without a ticket agent, you gotta pay the conductor cash?
No.
There's a kiosk that takes cash if you want to get a ticket there.
Oh, okay,
Or
I got you,
Just
okay.
You
like
could
the,
do apps
electric
and websites and stuff like that too.
It's all electronic now.
So anyways, go check out Crema, because I'm gonna keep cheerleading it.
Yeah, no, it's a good
It's
place.
kind of, and right now it's really weird, it's obviously January was an awful month to leave the house, so, I know that's kind of when she kicked off here, but
Yeah,
go
but
check
it's
it
a
out if you haven't. If you like coffee, if you don't like coffee, she's got different drinks there too. A staff that's really active to help you find whatever you want as well, so. That's all I got. I
Okay.
gotta plug something. I did it with avocado theory too. So.
You get paid for that?
Nope.
I got something. I don't know who I'm throwing under the bus here, but what's the agenda for our meeting here tomorrow night?
Tomorrow?
Man, the board out here says the plan commission's meeting here tomorrow night at 7
Not me
o'clock.
under the bus, so. I think you scrolled up on there that said the plan
scrolled
commission,
up on
there was
the
a plan
screen out
commission
there.
meeting tomorrow.
We'll talk to marketing.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Don't talk to the guy behind the door.
Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Nah.
I do have a question. The farm on 84th Avenue, so they demoed it.
Yeah.
What was there a specific reason why that was demoed? I mean,
I
so,
think the church has had it.
so they own the property.
Yeah.
Catholic Archdiocese did. So I grew up, like, literally, my parents still lived behind there, and we knew the farmer. But it was completely demolished this week, and we didn't know if there was, like, squatters that happened to, like, take up space there, or if it was a safety issue, or what happened.
It was starting to become, so they want to market it to sell it. I don't think the church wants or needs it anymore, so it's
Okay.
really to make it more marketable.
Okay.
And in the meantime, taxes, security, safety, utilities, all that makes sense it wasn't in great shape, was to demo all the buildings that were on it. That's what they wanted to do. They got the right permits for it and everything.
Okay.
It's just to market it. We've had a couple people reach out, obviously residential is what would go there, so, we don't have anybody before us now, but I think just to gauge more interest to market it
Gotcha.
and not have a deteriorating
Yeah.
house that gets worse and
Yeah.
worse.
Old chain link
Got
fence.
We're gonna move on to receive comments from the public. Okay.
I'm tired, I won't go home.
Okay. Do I hear a second? No. With that said, no comments from the public. We'll move on to adjourn the meeting. May I have a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Gaskell, seconded by Commissioner Sepisi. Good night, everybody. The meeting ends at about
Commissioner Gaskell likes to.
9:00 PM Central. Have a good one.